an exciting, relatively new field. There's no college degree for it or standard global certification. So people are wondering, how do I get started? And I think a lot of companies are also asking, what do I look for? So it's probably obvious that UX writers should be native speakers of the language of the interface that they're writing, or not, but I think that is a strong preference, and that they should be not necessarily. Okay, I want to hear more about that in a minute, and that, but they should be excellent writers. Let's agree on that. But like, how should people educate themselves and gain experience? How do they take all that preparation if they've done everything right and showcase it in order to break into the field and get the job? So to answer these questions, I want to talk to some people who I think have the answers, and I'm just going to expand a bit on Avi's introduction. We have Roy West here, a UX writer at Google for almost a decade, serving as the head of UX writing for search and maps for about 4 years, and then moved to Uber as design director, focusing on UX writing. I personally first met Roy when I was a very new UX writer looking for mentorship and guidance, and he has probably been in the world of UX writing longer than almost anyone else out there, so I am very much looking forward to his perspective. Jen Schaefer is with us from Netflix. She's the first designated manager of Netflix's content design team, and the size of the next Netflix content design team has actually more than tripled since she joined in January of last year. So she knows a thing or two about hiring, and before that, she managed a team of content strategists at Google. So she really has a lot to share with us about what it takes to join growing teams at exciting companies. And our co-host of the entire conference, Nora Ginio. Nora is the head of the Writers Guild at Wix, has been mentioned. And this is a company with probably more UX writers than almost any other company out there. You mentioned maybe Shopify and a few others, but not many. And according to my own LinkedIn alerts, at least, Wix is hiring more UX writers all the time. So I'm looking forward to hearing about hiring at that scale. Okay, so the number one question people are asking on all of the Facebook groups and Twitter threads that I see is basically like, what are you looking for? Meaning, what are the main skills or experience that you're looking for, certifications, anything? So Roy or Jen or Nora, can you let us know about that?
Well, so the first thing that I'm looking at is writing samples. We certainly, up until just a few years ago, we didn't have enough of a pipeline of people with experience in UX writing directly. So we had to be a little bit more broad-minded and looking at writing and trying to evaluate whether that writing would translate into what we need. So looking for well-crafted, well-thought-through writing samples is, for me, quite a bit more important than the resume itself.
Nora, I know that at Wix, that's also the first thing that they ask for, right? Is already seeing like some actual work, right?
Actually, we do a test. So one of the first things that we do in the recruitment process is test people. We send them a test that they can do in about 72 hours. And what we get from that is their curiosity about UX. You know, are they looking just to go inside the boxes that are there, or are they thinking holistically from the user perspective and adding boxes in different places, or putting words that are not already outlined and just switching the words that are already there? And actually, most resumes that we get, I'm a true believer in finding raw talent. So we actually test a lot of people that apply, because it's been one of the best ways to grow a large UX writing team.
Very cool. Roy, can I just ask you about writing samples? What about people who have never, like you said, never done any UX writing before? What samples can they send?
So, you know, 5-6 years ago, we were hiring people who hadn't done any UX writing before. I think some of the strongest samples candidates came out of journalism, but there were some people from documentation. So again, we have to be a little bit creative about how we read those writing samples and look for a style of writing that we think would lend itself to success at UX writing if you don't have the privilege of having a strong supply of people who can show you specifically UX writing examples. The other thing I'll say is it doesn't take a lot to see whether the quality is there. It's not a volume issue. It's presenting a small amount of work that shows strengths in solving different kinds of puzzles.
Yeah, I will second that. I've even seen people do really creative things when they're applying for a role where they'll do teardowns of a product and actually weigh in and critique one of their favorite products to also show that product thinking and that ability to think strategically. So I think I second everything that's been said already. It's both showing that you have writing skills and understand the UX writing best practices. So things like making text really scannable and parsable and front loading important information. No matter what your background, we have people on our team from advertising, journalism, gaming, library science, a whole spectrum. And then I think, really taking a step further to, if you don't have that experience, to show that you can connect the dots between what you've done previously and the best practices for UX writing.
Very cool. So I think natural next question is the portfolio specifically. Do you require a portfolio? Do you prefer a portfolio? What should someone put in a portfolio? And I think a little like that we a little bit discussed, but I'm also really interested in what not to put in a portfolio. And also just like simple technical things like, is this meant to be a PDF, a website? Like how do you see that? Jen, do you want to start?
Sure. So portfolio is really your chance to execute your storytelling skills for the world, right? So we're writers, storytelling is a big part of our job, and that starts with your portfolio. So I think looking at it through that lens, I personally really prefer an online portfolio versus a PDF that can get separated from the rest of the documentation or a Google or a Word doc. And I don't have a website personally, but I use Behance, which is, I believe, owned by Adobe to just create a site. So if you don't want to invest in building your own site, I think there are online tools you can use to just get all your samples in one place, write a little intro about yourself, have your contact information, connect it to your LinkedIn. And I agree that the first step is just having that really solid portfolio that tells something about you and the work you've done and the work you want to do.
Interesting. Nora, can you say anything about portfolios that you guys get, or do you not ask for them? Do you require them?
I love getting them. It's like a roadmap to see somebody's evolution in their writing. So I actually really like getting them. I'm going to do a shameless plug. You can get a free portfolio template and website with Wix for your portfolio, everyone. It's actually in the CV section of our templates at Wix, so you should do it. I do enjoy getting the roadmap you can see with people who are experienced and really evolved. But it's not the be all and end all. Again, I think it's, taking it back to why we test, it's really looking for raw talent to, reflect what Roy said is, for many years, you couldn't find a UX writer. It's still hard to find a lot of experienced UX writers. So you have to take people literally from the street with talent and then teach them how to become a UX writer.
Very cool. Roy, do you think that portfolios you're seeing in the last year or two are very different from what they used to be, and for better or for worse?
I'm personally more interested in the writing samples, right? So if I go to a website, I'll look and see how well put together it is. In some ways, it's a reflection of your presentation skills. And in so many of the companies that we work in, the presentation is the coin of communication, right? Whether we like it or not. Being able to organize material visually like that is an important skill. So I'm looking at the portfolio for that, but that's a minority of my interest. I'm really trying to dig in and actually look at the writing, because in the end, it's the writing that I'm hiring for. One other thing I'll just say, I've also believe very strongly in writing tests. I just happen to screen using writing samples first, but a writing test really helps you see somebody's individual work. And it's also a way of sort of standardizing what you're looking at. You get real familiar with a good writing test to see what skills people have and what's missing.
Yeah.
Is that-
I will second that.
Go
We
ahead.
also use writing
Let me
exercises.
interject for a second. I want to know, do you need a background in technology? Do you need to understand something about UX to be a part of this? Or you just need to have some journalism background and now you want to work in technology? How do people really get into the business? What do they really need to have if they haven't done any design work or haven't thought about UX writing before? Is it possible to get in?
I can take that. So I think in addition to showing that you understand UX writing best practices and are able to do the job through the writing, an understanding of product design is very, very important. And there are so many resources to get up to speed on everything that's entailed with product design and design thinking. I think this is where a certification class can come in handy if you're brand new to the industry, if you want to get into the mindset of a product design. I know at Netflix, we very consciously call ourselves content designers to just reinforce that we are designers. Our medium is just language and words. We partner very closely with interaction designers. So making sure that you understand the main tools like Sketch and Figma and are able to kind of talk the talk of what it's like to be on a product design team, even if you've never held that role, is really important.
Yeah, I'd second that. I put together a presentation a while ago about what I thought were the core competencies. And writing obviously is very important, but I used to tell my team we're designers first and writers second, just to try to emphasize that that our primary goal is successful interaction design, right? And that we're bringing language to that. The other things that skills that I think are important are understanding something about research, something about content strategy, what's your plan for how you're using language to achieve product goals, right? It's not writing for its own sake. And then, forgive me if I already said it, something about research and metrics, some understanding that you need to measure what you do. And then some kind of, I try to get people to be sort of reflexive about documenting the style decisions that they're making. It helps you scale, building out best practices and word lists and that sort of thing. And helps you, when you're under resourced, to get other people to be able to self-serve. So I don't mean to take this too far in the other direction, but these are areas that I'm looking for. And I think to answer your question, Avi, that the answer is about the level, right? So larger companies have openings at different levels, and they may have openings for people who don't have a ton of product experience. So that's where we're really looking for, whether journalism or documentation or some other kind of writing shows a facility for the things that we care about, that somebody mentioned earlier about scannability, about progressive disclosure, right? That I think that are shared in journalism. And then we're looking in terms of leveling, whether people have built out some of these other skills, which is sort of career-long thing.
Just add to Roy's list that I think globalization is another topic that often comes up in interviews, in addition to how do you partner with researchers. So even if you've never worked with a company that translates into other languages, try to have a grasp of how writers might partner with translators. It really comes down to context, right? Being able to provide really great context about what you've written in the source language so that people can take that and make informed decisions in their languages. So I think that's something that comes up often in interviews.
Very cool.
I've also seen some people take writing that wasn't specifically for an interface and be able to explain how the decisions that they made would be applicable to interfaces. I think that's a really good way for people that are new to the discipline and may not have a long portfolio of work to show. If you can at least talk to how you made decisions for word choice to be user-centric or like in knowing your audience, I think that's a really good way to get your foot in the door.
Very cool. So since these are, you all hire, can you think of, recent hires or, someone who really stands out and what made them stand out? Like what made you go like, okay, that's the one I'm hiring, not the other candidates? Or what made someone stand out and say, I am not hiring that one? Like the best and the worst of finding the right writer.
I'll start off with the best is thoroughness in the research that they did approaching the test, which is the first step at Wix. I'm quite surprised at the amount of times that I've had a writer come and sit down in front of me and I said, okay, you signed up to Wix, you tried the product, and they went, no, but my friend did. So what I do like, yeah, I know, mouth open, it's amazing, but what I like is when people come and they're very clear about, they understand our competitive landscape. They've done the research, because there's so much information that you can go out there and learn about the website building space and who the competitors are. And in addition to, can talk to their favorite content sites. I want somebody that's word obsessed. You know, when I'm looking to write a piece of content, there's certain sites that I go to for inspiration because I love the content, because I'm always consuming it. So somebody that can really respond saying, oh, I love Airbnb, for example, they will, it's like, yes, they get it because they're really paying attention to the user journey and the words that they experience on those different sites.
Fantastic.
I can talk about one example that stands out of someone I hired recently. And this person was coming off a 20-year career in journalism. And I loved how they owned that at the interview. Front and center, they said, I have been a journalist for 20 years. I have not been part of a lot of product writing teams, but here's how I'm going to connect my skills from the journalism world to UX writing. And they really just made that connection. Hey, I'm used to thinking critically, and I'm used to asking questions. I'm used to writing to an inverted pyramid. And I thought that was a really awesome way to just, you know, it was an issue that was on our minds, so he just owned it and addressed it and really sold it. So that was one that stands out, and we did end up offering this person a job. I would say a recent interview that stands out as being not so great is a person who had recently come out of one of the UX writing certification programs. And I think those programs are awesome. But this particular person, I think, was a little too in her head. And it came out sounding very academic, like she was giving a presentation to the class. Felt very scripted. So I think it's important that you let some of yourself shine through and you know, just not get too caught in your head about what you think people want to hear in the interview process, and you know, really think through ahead of time the things that you want to highlight.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Don't just say what you think they're looking to hear, because what they're looking to hear is what you actually have to say.
I think it's helpful to think about two parts of the process. One is getting invited to an interview, how you go about arranging that, and the other is what you do in the interview, right? Because they're both quite different. You know, we talked a bit about having something compelling that makes me want to talk to you, right? And that may include a conversation, but it's principally writing samples and maybe a writing exercise. But then in the interview, boy, you really want specific examples of how they solve problems. I mean, I can't tell you how often in hiring committee, we talk about process, right? Did this person engage with the process and talk about their process? And what we mean by that is, even if it's not about UX writing, what are the questions they asked? What did they, how did they find out the answer to things when the problem wasn't clear? All the kinds of things that we struggle with as writers in product, on, you know, covering moving targets with conflicting agendas and that sort of thing. How have they dealt with those kinds of things in the past, and how did they use their language skills to help make whatever the project was, whether it was a product or an article or whatever, better and clearer and more successful? How did they decide whether what they did was successful or not, right? All of these core skills, how did they actually apply them in projects that they worked on? And can they actually speak to the writing samples and their thinking and process with those samples, to also tie back the samples that you'd like to demonstrate that they actually really wrote them? Because sometimes there's multiple people on a project and it's hard sometimes to know exactly what their role was.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to share one other question that often trips people up in interviews, and that is, tell me about a time when you had to balance user needs with business needs. That's a pretty common question, and particularly when we have PMs as part of the interview process. And a lot of people just kind of draw a blank when you ask them that question. So I think thinking about, yes, you know, we are all user advocates. We're on generally the user experience team, but also showing that you have an understanding of the business side and you can make those types of trade-offs and decisions, I think is important.
Very nice.
One red flag for me is people who are too attached to their language. So if I start asking questions about people's writing and I get too strong a sense of ownership to every word, that's always a red flag for me, because we don't, it's just not the world that we live in. It's such a collaborative process, and good ideas about language can come. One of my happiest days at Google was when an engineer I was working with came up with a better solution to a writing puzzle than I could come up with, because it meant that he had internalized what I was trying to do, right? And it just made me really happy. But that meant the product got better because I didn't have to come from me. And that's a big red flag. We have to be very collaborative in these environments. Otherwise, for a lot of other issues, the other panels we're talking about earlier as well, in terms of building relationships with stakeholders and that sort of thing.
Right. So do you want to add, anyone want to add any more tips about interviewing before I move on? Okay. So now let's say we've moved past the interviewing and you got the job. What makes for a successful start? Like those first days, months, quarter, like what's really going to help you and the company feel, okay, we made the right decision. This really is a good fit.
So I would say don't expect to be productive right off the bat. I usually tell my new hires, give yourself a month to just sit back, take it all in, build up the context so that you kind of know the lay of the land and you understand what's happening before you feel like you have to start producing. I think it's fine to be quiet in meetings at first and not feel like you have to speak up right off the bat. Really just give yourself a little grace on learning the things you need to know when you start at a new company. And my second tip is meet with as many people as you can. Thinking back to my time at Google, I think Roy and I met because we it's just happenstance that he came into my office one day. And I think the more people that you meet, the more connections you have, and you never know when you're going to call on those connections in your career. So I think that setting up one-on-ones, I kind of think about it as circles. Meet with the inner circle first of the people you're going to be working directly with, then make the circle a little bit wider, maybe people who are working on products like yours, and just keep building out until, before you know it, you'll find you have a pretty big network.
I think that's great advice. And one thing I would add to what, I know someone who is in the middle of her career who just started at a big tech company 3 weeks ago. And so the challenges of starting during coronavirus on top of that remotely are really hard, right? And this is someone who is accustomed to being very productive in her previous job, and now is coming in and there's a big team and she's trying to figure out her way, right? And it's her manager is saying, be patient, right? You'll get there, but it's hard to internalize. So I would second both the being patient with yourself, also the meeting people. The one thing I would add is trying to understand what the people's goals are, right? A lot of times understanding what it is that they're trying to accomplish, not just what they do, but how are they measuring whether what they're doing is successful. It helps you approach them in a way that shows you're an ally if you're thinking about how what you're doing is going to help them achieve the goals that they're trying to achieve.
Very interesting. Nora, do you want to add anything to that? You with us?
I'm mute. Yeah. I think I can only take from my own experience where I had a career in Canada and made a move to Israel and needed to restart my career. Probably similar to Roy's friend that is going into a new company. And I think one of the things that I got advice was really your experience before is a tool belt that you can draw from. But check it at the door and really embrace the culture and the expectations of a new company. You can always draw on your past experience because you are a professional, but check the ego, and really come with an open heart and soul to really embracing their new DNA. And I found it was really, really helpful.
Cool. And so the last question is very, very open, and I'd love to hear from our panelists and also any of the other speakers, or maybe even people in the audience. Just advice that you would give to aspiring UX writers out there who just want to hear from people who are experienced in the field, like just really open-ended. If you could tell someone new anything, what do you think they need to hear?
I also would like to hear what if you're already working, how do you maintain a career? How do you grow? How do you, like, is there any like way to, a career path or recommendations to enhance your career as well? So in all that, anyone from the audience as well.
Well, I'll just dive in. My advice would be, don't be shy about talking to people, about writing to people and asking for advice. I think we have a culture that's pretty helpful in tech. And I think, you know, people are busy, they don't always respond, but if you reach out to people, you'll be surprised at how people will respond and be open to talking with you for a half hour or something like that. Also, I mean, resources like this are fabulous to network and to be able to hear what people in the business are doing. And of course, there's such a growing body of written material from the collective, from the hub, from you know, on Medium. There's just tons more material and good books out now. There's just, it's a bit different than it was even 3 years ago, let alone 5 or 6 years ago. And then to answer the other part of your question, I think that both Jen and I touched on how there's a set of skills that are outside of just pure writing that are very important to growing your career. And you know, all of those things are worth investing in, and you can follow your interest and carve out a set of skills that will make you more valuable and move your career forward in, you know, again, research, as Jen pointed out, localization, interaction design. There's a bunch of closely allied skill sets besides writing that you can invest in learning, and that will make you more valuable and move your career forward.
Yep, I would agree with all that. And just there's so many great online UX writing communities out there. So, you know, join those Facebook groups, those LinkedIn groups. Make sure you're reading some of the great resources that are posted. I'm constantly learning new things by all the great articles and different resources people are creating. So I think that's the best way to keep your skills current, is just to be out there, commit to growing your skill set and keeping on top of the trends. And also, you know, I get a lot of people who reach out to me on LinkedIn, and it's interesting to think about who am I willing to talk to, and because I can't talk to everyone. And I think the more someone can customize their correspondence and really say, hey, I love this thing your team did, or I've been a fan of Netflix forever, or something more than just, hey, can you set up time to talk with me? So that you really, I think, break through and show that you've spent a little time reaching out to someone deliberately versus just blanket sending a message out can make all the difference.
And because of COVID, I overlooked meetups. San Francisco has a fabulous UX writing meetup, which unfortunately hasn't had the privilege of being able to get together, but is really valuable if your local area has one, or think about starting one.
Yes, I think Christopher can add to that as well. Christopher, you also, yesterday we talked a little bit. I see you here. You are starting a new, right? You started a new path in a place. Can you discuss a little bit what's your perspective on this and starting in a new place? And also he is leading a Czech Republic UX writing meetup there.
Yeah, I was just at first trying to give some UX writers a place to find some sort of community, because everybody, well, not everybody, but the reality is a lot of us are alone in our company. We're the only UX writer. There usually isn't more than one, unless you're in a great position like some of the people are here, where you've got a whole team around you. A lot of people don't have someone to bounce like ideas off of and things like that. And so it's really great when you can give somebody a place like that, and be it a Slack channel or a Facebook group that people can post in, and they'll post things like, oh, hey, this is the problem I'm looking at. How would you guys approach this? And, you know, not everybody has the context of everything that's going on, so you try to give as much as you can, but sometimes people can give just some little insights, like, hey, maybe you change this one word, or this sounds a little ambiguous or something like that. So you can kind of get a little bit of like tiny bit of user testing there in a Facebook group like that. But yeah, no, the meetup groups are definitely very, very helpful.
There's a question from the audience. Nomi says, how do you scale up a UX writing team? If you're starting at one, how do you scale up the team when the company grows? Is there any strategy or any ideas to share to the, or when do you know you need to add more, maybe?
I can take this for starters. So I think it's very much partly evangelizing the discipline, right? So when I joined Netflix, there were 4 UX writers covering 4 of many different verticals, many different areas. So we started there. We started, building I guess a brand as a team. We started educating people what UX writing is, how you can partner with us. We started really capturing some of the winning tests that were very language driven and making sure we were getting the word out about those. And then from there, it was, I don't think I've done a lot of going out and pitching roles. It's more like the word spreads and people come to me and say, hey, how do I get a UX writer for my area, and building out the business case together for why we would hire that role. But I think as a starting point, you just need to make sure that you're always educating, always evangelizing, and really building up that brand for what UX writing is at your company.
Okay. I see an interesting question from Clarissa. Clarissa, can you speak your question? Just open your mic or on camera.
Sure. Hello.
Hey.
Hi. Hi, Roy. Hi, everyone. So my question was, our roles have really different definitions from company to company. And so sometimes when people say they're hiring for a content strategist or a UX writer or an editor or whatever they're calling us, it can be hard to define what that actually means and what their expectations will be. So when we're interviewing, what are some good questions or some other ways that you would suggest to suss out what they actually mean by the role and what the real responsibilities are?
Okay, thank you. Anyone?
So I would think about where you've seen UX writing work well as part of a design team, and then start asking questions about how to fish for whether any of those pieces are actually in place at the company. So there's two benefits to this. One is you start to find out whether the recipe is there for success, right? Are the writers working with research? Is there ability to run experiments? How hard is it to run experiments? How are you measuring success? You begin to find out whether they're set up for success for the role. But the other thing you're doing at the same time is demonstrating that you understand, you have a point of view about what a successful role looks like. And if you're interviewing with someone who has set that stuff up, you're at the same time communicating that you understand a bit about what the recipe for success is. And that, I think, is a strong testament to your background and experience.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we are out of time, exactly right on time. So thank you, Clarissa, for adding in, and thank you for all the panelists. It was amazing. Please, guys, unmute yourself and give us a clap or say woohoo. It was a really amazing day. Thank you. Wow. It's so quick, So again, I want to thank you, everyone. Again, tomorrow at the same time. If you guys want to stay, we're going to stick around for another 15 minutes with me and discuss things, but you're all welcome to say goodbye. I have a button here. Yes, the lights, we're done. So thank you again, and see you tomorrow at the same time. And if anyone wants to stay, I'm here. So bye-bye for now.
Thank you, Avi.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Wish I could stay, but I got a family to go back to. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But thanks
all
everyone.
good.
It was really amazing. Absolutely amazing. Such information and such community, even on a Zoom channel. Very nice.
Oh my God, thank you. By the way, everyone participate, add your words. We'd like to hear from you.
Thank you, very helpful.
I'd love to know, in the next 15 minutes, if people are staying, I'd love to know what you've learned today, or maybe kind of collaborate, share with me a perspective. Okay, people are leaving. A perspective on something that you took from this company. Which was your favorite talk? Why? Let me hear you.
I got a quick comment, if I could. Well, I really liked today. It was even better than yesterday. And I think one general takeaway I had was just, quality first, quality over quantity, especially when I was thinking about a portfolio. Now, I'm very much a newbie. I am about to get into the job market. I completed a certificate program. So I'm hoping I can actually toss out a quick question too to the crowd, which is that as we're talking about crafting our portfolios and writing samples, which is something I'm doing, I'm thinking about putting in one's 10,000 hours to get up to snuff with this, and really just what can I do on a daily basis since I'm not yet in the industry. If anybody has any advice on things that I can be doing, either whether it's like little exercises, actually writing things, or just thinking about things differently, I definitely want to fill out my schedule with some activities to work on my practice.
That's a great idea. That's actually really good. I'm thinking about the idea of mentorship, and everyone, how do you really, if you are working in this, how did you start? Because it's such an interesting new field in design and technology. Maybe Yael is still here. Maybe you have a perspective, but anyone else, please join in.
I think there's a lot out there you can read. I think Roy mentioned a few of the big blogs. UX Collective is a big one. And there are a lot of Medium publications that have really high quality content. And the more you read, the more you start to see common themes, and you start to, things will become familiar, and you'll feel like, the first time you read an article about progressive disclosure, you might be like, oh my God, what is that? I'm going to Google it.
Wait a minute, what's happening?
That wasn't me, right?
Continue.
And then, the first time you see something like that, like progressive disclosure, you're like, what is that? But by the 10th perspective on it, you'll start to feel like, okay, I'm familiar with this conversation. If this came up in an interview, I could hold my own on this topic and things like that. So I think reading is really, really important. And I also think seeking out critiques on your sort of practice work. So I know there's it's called like the 14-day challenge, right? There's something like that on Twitter where you get you sign up and you get one challenge, UX writing challenge a day, and you're supposed to limit yourself to only 10 minutes to do it, I think. And then people post on Twitter their here's what the assignment was, here's what I did. And then, and there's a hashtag, I think it's UX writing challenge. And so sometimes I just go to the hashtag UX writing challenge and just give feedback and just be like, I think you did this really well. I think you could do this differently. And I think if you do that, and also be proactive about asking for feedback, if nobody sort of finds it on their own, just reach out, tag people, be like, I honestly, ego at the door. What do you think? And even if you disagree with feedback that you get, I would say the first question to ask yourself, and this is not because you're a newbie, this is just everyone on the job every day, is just ask yourself okay, but how could they be right? What is right about what they're saying? Maybe I don't agree with all of their pushback, but what can I learn from it? I think that's really helpful.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else has some perspective or question or to share about what they learned? Because when we learn things, when we listen to things, everyone gets different things, a different perspective. And sometimes when I hear someone's perspective, I was like, wow, this is interesting. I haven't even thought about it. So I'd like to know maybe.
I was just going to ask what program Justin is in. Curious.
Oh, okay. Justin, what program you're in?
Oh, sorry. Hey, so I live outside of the Seattle area. So I went to University of Washington. They have a certificate program in UX design. So it wasn't just a writing program. Actually, I kind of wish there had been more writing in it, but I did get familiar with some of those programs, Sketch, Figma, and design thinking in general. Overall, I thought it was pretty good. I think there are probably more intense programs out there, but it was intended to be an in-person class program, but the virus had other ideas about that. So, but overall, I enjoyed it.
Thank you. I guess I'm curious. Actually, that's a good point because I'm wondering if, as a writer, how important is it to have certain design skills, technical skills? Like how well versed in these areas should we be? This is a question for anyone.
I'll just real quickly say that I found it helpful as someone who intends to be more of a writer. I did find it pretty helpful to play around with this stuff and get familiar with it, just because it made me feel more confident about the ultimate goal of the writing, but I'll let other people take it away.
I can kind of talk to that too. I use Sketch and now Figma with my team, and it's more like just working knowledge. You don't have to be a pro. Like, just go in there and know how to put your content in. And then it also really helped me to put the portfolio together once I learned how to use Sketch. So I thought that was useful for me in that sense as well.
Okay. A lot. For me, coming into this UX writing, I am working on this, event. I'm always like wondered about this. What we discussed is the career in UX writing. Anyone else could pitch in on how they started, or where they came into it. How did they fell into this the UX writing field? Because it's such a new thing. A lot of people are wondering, and there's not a lot of learning. There's a few books. There's everyone is talking about articles, but maybe I'd love to hear some stories.
I guess I can pitch in a little
Good.
bit if you can
Oh,
hear me
yes.
from the outside world. So I'm Emma. I'm a product copywriter for Treatwell. I don't know if you're familiar with the company. Essentially, it's a beauty booking platform, and we're across 11 markets now. So mostly in the UK, but also in Germany, Spain, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I got into product copywriting or UX copywriting essentially through I guess I just got really lucky because Airbnb contacted me about a 3-month project that they were doing, a transcreation project, because I'm fluent in English and Lithuanian. So they moved me to Rome to work on a transcreation project where we were essentially transcreating the Airbnb website and app into, 30 different languages. And so after that, I think it's really funny, but having the Airbnb name on my CV has really helped land other gigs, because obviously it's a huge company to have worked for and a huge company to have sort of
But what is your background? How did you what brought you to this field?
Yeah, so I actually studied journalism, and then worked in market research for ages, so a completely different job for about 5 years. And then I went back into not really journalism, but more into copywriting, content writing, essentially. So I was writing sort of articles that were 3,000 words, and now I do micro copywriting, which is incredible. Going from 3,000 word blog articles into 5-6 words on a tiny app screen has been sort of life-changing. And
was there something that brought you in there? Did you read a book, or how did you fall into this? You said to yourself, I want to be a UX writer.
Not really. It was essentially just a company that I really, really wanted to work for. So Treatwell was a company that I've always really admired, and I thought, I'm going to go for a company that I would really feel proud working for, and I just sort of happened to land in UX copywriting, and now it's extremely interesting, and I want to sort of develop my skills more, which is why I'm in this conference.
Okay, thank you. It's good to see you.
Can I share? Hi.
Yeah. Hey,
Hi.
Gabby.
Hi. Hello.
Where are you from, Gabby?
I'm from Brazil, but I'm based in Istanbul.
Okay.
So I just to circle back to what Emma was saying. So I have a very unorthodox career, I would say, career path so far. I was an academic for about 10 years. And I ended up having a PhD in English and cultural studies. And then for some reason, I ventured into content marketing. Don't ask me how or why. And turns out 3 years later, 2 years after that, and it's been a year now that I'm in this company, I'm working for a Dutch startup, the circular economy and sustainability startup based in Amsterdam. So I was back and forth, sort of, but I'm like a native remote UX writer, basically. I'm a content designer with them. And the crazy thing is, I had no clue I was going to end up doing this or working in the sustainability and the circular economy market, which is huge in Europe, and it's becoming global. And we are the developing partner for the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. So Emma was talking about, having this interesting companies or names in your CV that make a huge difference. And for me, it started actually with having a PhD that had nothing to do with content or design, or the only thing that had in common was that I have a very heavy background in research, and the fact that there's an English before my PhD made a huge difference. But what I wanted to say is just a little anecdote, is that we have so many different backgrounds, and I think one of the biggest outcomes of this conference for me, it's the first time I'm attending this. It's the first time I'm seeing UX writers and content designers, to be honest, because I'm very isolated from everyone else, and my team is very small. We're 9 people, but we are catering for Fortune 500 companies, but I'm the only person doing content for the company. But it's just that because we look at this, like everyone has so many different backgrounds, and everyone is sort of like trying to find what kind of company should I work for? But we all have the same problems. We all have the same, the designer that doesn't understand that there needs to be a copy, or et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not making any sense, and it's, really late here, but I just wanted to say that it's really refreshing to see that we all share the same issues, and we are so different, and we have so many different backgrounds. And I think, what I did basically, I just learned on the way. I just researched and learned and reached out to a lot of people. And I am very shameless. I just go on LinkedIn and I talk to everyone. I ask questions to everyone. And yes, it's surprising how willing people are to, talk back and share, and sometimes share resources. It's always surprising. So don't be scared to ask questions and ask for help. I don't know.
I think that's what's defining this, user experience as a profession, where people are working in user experience. That I find that a lot of people are very friendly. They want to help. It's not competitive as other, fields as I feel it. And I feel like a lot of people do want to help. If you just reach out and says, hey, I want to start in this, how do I start? Or tell me more about what you do. And people are very, very generous. And by the way, I think that
I can tell you how I got started if people are interested.
Oh yes, Sarah Beth, go for it.
Hello. I also had quite an unorthodox career background, ranging from pre-med in college, and then English teaching, English editing, and then makeup artist for a bit, like all kinds of funny things. And then similar to Justin, I did a UX and UI design boot camp in Chicago, super intense. It's called Designation, and it got bought by the Flatiron School, which was then bought by WeWork, and we all know about WeWork, so let's just leave that alone. But it was like a super intense 8-month course, and so basically I thought I was going to become a UX designer. That's what I wanted to be. And oddly enough, I couldn't find a job in UX design. I think that the field was super, super saturated. I think everyone and their mom thinks they can do it. I think a lot of graphic designers move into the field also. And it could also just be an issue of location, because I'm located in Israel. I'm originally from Texas, but right now I'm in Israel. I think it's harder to find good writers than it is to find good UX designers. So I think that we should all kind of tap into our superpower that a lot of people think, oh, I can write in English. I speak English, I can write. And that's not necessarily true. And I feel like if we can kind of tap into that power and give ourselves credit where credit is due, we can kind of leverage that. And I think, Justin, speaking to you, especially having the background in UX design can only be a strength, because I know when I did my interview, I definitely was speaking not just about the writing and the words on the page, but also I was addressing the UX and the UI decisions also, and how they can interact with the words. So I think it can be a strength, and I think anyone coming from any background can get into the field, even if you didn't mean to, even if it was by accident, like for me. So to share
So
that.
I got a few questions for everybody. I think I'm gonna tie it in nice.
Where are you from, first of all? I know Sarah
I'm from Israel. I'm from Israel, but I'm actually Brazilian. So I just moved back to Israel a week ago. I'm under quarantine right now.
Where are you right now?
I'm in Rehovot right now.
Oh,
under
okay.
quarantine. Yeah,
Okay.
in Israel. So I'm a designer in training. I'm actually just like Justin, maybe even Justin's junior, just getting into product design, learning as much as I can. And I feel like I'm getting a lot of information overload. It's like you guys said, everybody comes from like different backgrounds, right? Everybody comes from like, everybody worked in different jobs. Me, myself, I'm a boxer and a coach, like a personal trainer. So it has nothing to do with the world of tech, nothing to do with design, but like, I feel like all my life, I have been very irritated at conflicting narratives, especially at work, when people are trying to get into like trying to reach one goal, but their behavior is very different. And I feel like UX design, and especially like writing, which is where you set the narrative for the whole design process, would be basically given the basis for companies or businesses to scale and grow, right? So my vision is to get as much as I can, like, and learn like a sponge from everybody, just like you guys, and eventually branch out and have my own agency where I can do like brand strategy, consulting, brand design. Now, my question is, how do you deal with all that information overload? And how do you know, let's say, how to get to that point? Because I just feel like, do you have to know everything to get to that point? If anybody can answer, that would be awesome.
I'm laughing because I can offer the opposite example. I've cast as wide a net as you can over UX writing and content strategy and content design. Right. And it's pretty rewarding, but the thing I'm discovering is that you find the focus, find the thing that grabs you, that kind of circles you in, and drive. But I think early on, it's probably not bad to cast a wide net. I don't know the exact scope of your interests, but I can just tell you from the other end of the spectrum that I'm twisting and pivoting now to a more focused approach.
All right.
But if you want to know anything about any part of content strategy, I can probably tell you about it. So
stay in touch.
Absolutely.
How about anybody else? How is like your process to get into a more senior position in your company, or branching out by yourself, dealing with all that information?
If I could add to this, I think don't put the pressure of like, you have to know everything going in. I really want to add to what Gabby was saying, like learn as you go. When I started like in UX writing, I think I got lucky and got a contract role where I am now. And as soon as I started talking about my goals with everybody, I realized how generous they were and how receptive. And I wasn't expecting that, but they were offering to help, like to have one-on-one sessions, to help mentor, to get better, or me to get better. So I guess what I'm trying to say is make it known, like what you want to do, share it with people. You'll be surprised how open they are to help everybody else, like to share their resources. And then just be patient and sorry, like I'm just talking to people, but just keep learning. That's one of my main things. Like the books that people are recommending, read, and just keep knowing that you won't know everything going in, but you can continue to learn and get better.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else would like to? Well, we're already past the time. I'm enjoying it so much, and it's nice to see people are sticking in, and the energies are so amazing. Anyone else wants to add into the conversation?
I can mention how I came into UX writing, which was a la derech, sort of by the way.
Okay,
I started in a new
you are
company.
from Israel, of course. Yes, so I just
Yes. I started by as a tech writer, but they told me to familiarize myself with the product. So I clicked on the first button and worked my way through. But to put it mildly, I was appalled at the English. So I created a report on all of my suggestions for improving the user interface language and even some of the design. And then, of course, the PM was enthralled because they'd never worked with a UX writer before. So just by creating this report, I ended up becoming a UX writer. So that was how I got into the field, sort of totally by chance. And I've since moved on to another company, which is much more mature in the UX writing. So I'm involved with the product team. I really identified with Yossi's presentation tonight because we recently had some issues. So we created a workflow to see how early I could conceivably be put into the flow. So it was, I really identified with his lecture. But in terms of continuing to learn, right now I'm taking a Coursera course on UX design processes and UX research in order to get different perspectives on what I'm doing. I'm joining this conference. There's also TechCom, which is for technical writers, but they also have the UX writing approach. It's a European technical community. So there are lots of ways to keep learning. There are Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups that deal with UX writing. So the resources are quite endless.
Yes, I agree. But by the way, it was not by chance because you actually went out and did a report and created yourself a scenario. So you created this, and I think this is an important lesson. I think that UX design is a condition that everyone has. Once you have it, it's like you cannot get yourself cured from it because everything else, everything looks like there's a mistake there. You see things and like, wow, why did they do this? And it's just ongoing lifestyle to just look at things and be critical of design. And I think that if you look at that,
at the time though, I didn't know it was UX writing. I was just fixing the English.
Okay.
So then I discovered, shortly after that, I discovered it, and I'm now totally addicted. It's like, don't give me anything else to do, just microcopy.
Oh, that's amazing. That's good to hear. Okay, so in this note, I will say goodbye to everyone. It was amazing to see you, and I will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thanks for this. I'm going to do again tomorrow a chat, after our chat with you. So it will be good to continue tomorrow. That's it. Bye-bye for now. I'm going to have another opportunity to press this button. Yes.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ciao. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.